Weekend marks President Cyril Ramaphosa's first 100 days in office. He took power in February after Jacob Zuma was forced to resign. Ramaphosa was elected ANC President in December. Let's now take a look back with political analyst Kwandiwe Kondlo and Public Relations Strategist Makhosini Nkosi. Thank you so much for coming through and talking to me. Let me start with you, Makhosini. There were a number of pledges that President Ramaphosa made in that now famous Tumamina speech. Among them were issues to do with fighting corruption. As we speak, there's been proclamation for various investigations by the SIU. But, you know, proclamations by the SIU are not necessarily a unique Ramaphosa-era thing. Yeah. But he's since taken a number of other actions. How do you gauge his fulfillment of those undertakings in as far as corruption is concerned?
I think as far as corruption is concerned, he's really put daylight between himself and corruption. You can't accuse him of corruption. I don't think that we have seen any allegations that link him to corruption. Let's start with the South African Police Service, law enforcement. We now have a head of the Hawks, a supremely educated career policeman, who has a PhD, General Libya. The Office of the National Police Commissioner is occupied, so there is no acting crime intelligence. So all that is taken care of. What we have not seen him taking any action on is the issue of the National Prosecuting Authority, which is a key element in the fight against crime. Kwandiwe and myself used to work at the NPA. Yeah. I think if it comes to corruption, that's where he has really distinguished himself as a New Deal man.
What do you make of the changes that have been made to the SOE boards? I mean, I always go back to how Cyril Ramaphosa was influential in this area even before he became president. Remember the whole thing around the World Economic Forum and the ESCOM board and how those changes were forced to be taken. But have they been far-reaching enough, these changes?
Well, I'm not sure if they are really far-reaching, but I think it's the kind of moves we should all appreciate. And you can actually see the attempts to really anchor the hope that we've speaking about during the Ramaphosa administration. And of course, some people have actually said, if you listen to the radios, people always complaining about one thing, that there's a tendency to recycle the same people, as if South Africa has no talent. But at the same time, you understand, because in some of these positions, you want people who are going to just hit the ground running. You want people who are going to be learning the ropes. So I think in the light of such concerns, well, you can say, I think the changes are quite good, far-reaching, maybe not far-reaching enough.
But are we not lowering the bar here for Cyril Ramaphosa, almost, congratulating him for, congratulating a fish for swimming? Yes. Should we not start really saying that he's achieved much when we start seeing people being hauled before the courts? No one has been taken before the courts yet. In any significant way, Makhosini?
I think the three things that are going to distinguish President Ramaphosa's rule, one, we've spoken about it, which is corruption, but mostly the impunity that came with corruption and state capture. And I think you can see now that the law enforcement agencies have been allowed to do their work, and they're doing their work. The second thing that I think is going to be very important for his presidency, it is the issue of the economy and job creation. And there I think he's going to have problems, because with the new minimum wage, for instance, that has come into place, it is going to affect SMEs. And this clamor for jobs, I think, may be affected, there will be a need for him actually to focus on building small businesses. And I think the third thing that is going to be important for him is the land question issue. You can see that the EFF is weaponizing this issue, using it for the forthcoming elections. And the real problem is that there could be instability if you say people must occupy land, because law enforcement agencies will have to do their work.
So interesting, you move us very swiftly there, Makhosini, and I appreciate that. When you talk about the issue of land, Makhosini uses the word, the EFF is weaponizing this issue, making it a political weapon. I'd say Cyril Ramaphosa is playing right into their hands, because it seems to me, at least, he's prevaricating on the issue. The tone of I remember the words, we are going to expropriate land without compensation, whether they like it or not. That was the tone when he was addressing the ANC at the end of its conference in December. But it's now, I think we are down to, it's a national debate about land expropriation, and we are trying to see if we can do it within the Section 25. Am I wrong? Am I being overly harsh here, Kwandiwe?
Yeah, well, I think President Ramaphosa is really trying to tread carefully a very difficult situation. A situation whereby, you see, he needs to sort of appropriate the radicalism of the EFF. And that is important for election purposes. At the same time, on the other hand, if you look at the ideology and history of the ANC doesn't have a history and a firm ideological position to deal with the land question, you see? And the ANC, that's why you find that even during negotiations, if you go through the minutes, the ANC and the National Party, in fact, let me say participants in the negotiations, devoted very little time to deal with the nitty-gritty issues around the land question. Hence, this question is coming back to bite the ANC, and it's biting the ANC at a very wrong time. It's a wrong time because Ramaphosa has to clean up the mess following what Mr. Zuma was doing for 9 years.
What is your personal sense then, Kwandiwe? Is Cyril Ramaphosa the kind of president who will walk the talk on the issue of expropriation without compensation, given also that he's chasing a very ambitious target in as far as investment is concerned of $100 billion in 5 years?
He will walk the talk, but in a very symbolic and marginal way. Because there are pockets of land which, I mean, it's very clear need to be expropriated because the owner is sitting in London and the piece of land is sitting here fallow. Such cases, that's where he'll need to show leadership. And I don't think the international markets will actually punish him for that.
Makhosini, let's talk about your area of specialty. I think few would fault President Ramaphosa's public relations game. I mean, we've seen the morning walks and that whole Tumamina approach and trying to make that popular. But how does that sit with some of the glaring scandals that we have seen? The whole issues around Arthur Fraser. I mean, the man, instead of being suspended, was just shifted to the side. Nomvula Mokonyane, we know about her past in the department that she used to run. She remains in cabinet, as do people such as Batabile Dlamini. Malusi Kikaba, who was found to have violated the constitution. How does that sit?
I think, you know, for the first 100 days, he's had a honeymoon period from the media. I think whilst he plays a very good public relations game, but in my view, he may very well be one of the most inaccessible presidents, in the sense that whenever he appears to the nation, he is scripted, it is on his own terms. We haven't seen the presidency, for instance, doing you know, open briefings. We haven't seen him granting interviews to senior journalists, and I was very happy to see him with members of SANEF in Cape Town. But beyond that conviviality and that happiness of people being together, seeing Kumbaya, we need to see senior journalists asking him hard questions, because that's what your viewers and the consumers of news in general expect. You know, we have this advent of 24-hour news channels where you see news breaking live. We've got social media, you know, your Twitter, etc. Now, viewers and ordinary citizens expect you to ask the hard questions. And if you can see, in terms of thought leadership, he's not as vocal as his predecessors were. You haven't heard him, for instance, talk about the issues of these cash in transit heists that are happening every day, where police and members of the army are accused, and he's the commander-in-chief. And if he won't speak as a first citizen, at least he must speak as commander-in-chief to what is happening in the country.
In fact, Julius Malema used that issue of the crime and the escalation in some of the incidents of crime to say to Cyril Ramaphosa, actually, you are weak. You are not able to deal with this situation. Overly harsh?
I think that's a bit harsh. Well, the first 100 days really is very short time.
But he can speak. Nothing stops him from talking.
Yes, absolutely.
He seemed to be leading the charge.
Yes, absolutely, he can speak. But sometimes you do get a sense that he's being overly careful. Overly careful, knowing that even his victory during the ANC conference was very slender. So in other words, his leadership is born under a number of constraining circumstances. And I do agree partially with the EFF that really we need to hear his voice, especially on issues that are a concern to the whole nation.
Final word to you, Makhosini. How is he navigating the dynamic in the ANC that Kwandiwe talks about? The dynamic of the mandate itself, where it derives from the history and background thereof. We've seen him having to deal with issues including the situation in the Northwest. We've seen people that have fallen by the wayside along the way. Is he consolidating his position and that mandate in the ANC leadership?
I think the issues that he was running on are the issues that resonated with the people. I think we must separate also between membership of the ANC and the broad voters, or particularly ANC supporters amongst the voters. The issues, for instance, corruption, I think if it were to be put to a vote about who would prevail between him and Supra Mahumapilini as far as Northwest is concerned, I think he would prevail. But inside the ANC, the voices of ordinary people aren't heard. What is heard are voices of the members of the ANC, who, of course, are interested in what is happening because they want to be part of a state power.